They told him he wouldn't make it. They said he wasn't good enough. But they didn't know his story. They didn't know the pain, the struggle, the nights spent with nowhere to sleep, no food, no hope. They didn't know about the moment his own mother looked him in the eyes and said, "I don't like the way you look. You gotta go." Imagine being just 13 years old, standing in the doorway of your own home, realizing you no longer have a place in the world. No bed to return to, no family to hold on to, just a basketball and a dream that seemed impossible. From being homeless to becoming an NBA superstar, this is the story of Jimmy Butler, the man who refused to let his circumstances define him. A story of resilience, of grit, of proving the world wrong, one shot at a time. Before we dive into this incredible journey, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more inspiring stories, and comment below. What's the biggest challenge you have ever overcome? Let's get into it. The sound of a door slamming shut. A 13-year-old boy stands frozen on the front porch, his mother's harsh words ringing in his ears. "I don't like the way you look. You gotta go." For most kids, home is a place of warmth, comfort, and love. But for Jimmy Butler, home was suddenly gone. No explanations, no second chances, just a cold, hard reality. He was on his own. With nowhere to go, Jimmy wandered the streets of Tomball, Texas, a small town just outside of Houston. He spent nights crashing at friends' houses, sometimes staying for a few days before moving on to the next. He had no stable place to sleep, no money, and no family to rely on. But despite it all, he had one thing: his love for basketball. Every morning, no matter how exhausted or lost he felt, Jimmy found his way to the nearest basketball court. It was the one thing in his life that made sense, the one place where he felt like he belonged. But the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. He was just a kid with a ball, a dream, and no idea how he would survive the next day. I knew I had to keep pushing. I knew I had to prove to myself and to the world that I was more than my circumstances. But just when things seemed hopeless, fate stepped in the form of an unexpected friendship that would change Jimmy's life forever. The Texas night was quiet. Jimmy sat alone on the bleachers of an empty basketball court, staring up at the sky, wondering what his future would hold. He had no home, no security, just a basketball and a dream that felt impossible to reach. But fate works in mysterious ways. One day, Jimmy met a boy named Jordan Leslie during a casual pickup game. Jordan was an athlete too, a football player, and the two quickly became friends. Jimmy's talent was undeniable, his work ethic unmatched. But Jordan noticed something else. Jimmy never talked about going home. "Hey man, where do you live?" Jordan asked one evening after practice. Jimmy hesitated before answering. "Nowhere really. I just stay wherever I can." When Jordan told his mother, Michelle Lambert, about Jimmy's situation, she didn't hesitate. She invited him to stay over for a night. That night turned into a weekend. That weekend turned into weeks. And eventually, Jimmy found himself becoming a part of the family. "You can stay here as long as you need to, but there's one rule: no slacking off. You have to work hard for what you want." Michelle Lambert. For the first time in years, Jimmy had structure. He had people who cared about him, a bed to sleep in, and food on the table. But most importantly, he had guidance, someone to push him, to hold him accountable, to make sure he didn't waste his potential. With a new home and support system, Jimmy had no excuses. He doubled down on his commitment to basketball. He spent hours in the gym, refining his skills, pushing himself harder than ever before. But despite his progress, there was still one major obstacle in his way. Making it to the NBA wasn't just a dream, it was an impossible challenge. Would Jimmy be able to prove himself against the best? Or would his past struggles hold him back? Stay tuned for the next part of the story. With a roof over his head and a family that believed in him, Jimmy Butler finally had a fighting chance. But having a home wasn't enough. He still had to prove himself on the court. Every great player has a defining moment. For Jimmy, it wasn't just one. It was every single day. Early mornings, late nights. While most high school kids were hitting snooze on their alarms, Jimmy was already up before sunrise, running drills at the gym. He spent hours practicing his shooting, footwork, and defense. He wasn't the tallest, fastest, or most naturally gifted player on the court, but he was always the hardest worker. "I knew I had to outwork everyone if I wanted to make it." Jimmy Butler. Michelle Lambert, the woman who had taken him in, made sure he stayed on top of his academics too. If he wanted to keep playing basketball, he had to maintain his grades. No excuses, no exceptions. Jimmy took the challenge head on. His work ethic started paying off. With each game, his skills sharpened. His confidence grew. He was no longer just another player. He was becoming a leader on the court. By his senior year at Tomball High School, Jimmy was a star. He averaged 19.9 points and 8.7 rebounds per game, leading his team and proving he had what it took to compete at the next level. But despite his talent and determination, there was a problem. No major college offers came. Jimmy had poured his heart into the game, and yet recruiters weren't knocking on his door. He wasn't a highly ranked prospect, and in the world of elite basketball, that meant everything. Most players would have given up. Jimmy? He saw it as one more challenge. With no Division I offers, Jimmy made a decision that would change his life. He enrolled at Tyler Junior College. For many players, junior college was the last stop before giving up on basketball. But Jimmy had no intention of stopping. He used it as an opportunity to prove himself all over again. And he did. At Tyler, Jimmy dominated, averaging 18.1 points per game. His relentless hustle and defensive intensity caught the attention of college scouts. Finally, his dream was within reach. Then the call came. Marquette University wanted him. Playing in a top-tier Division I program was a whole new level of intensity. Jimmy was no longer the best player on the team. He had to fight for his spot. Coach Buzz Williams pushed him harder than ever before. Practices were brutal, expectations were sky-high, and Jimmy found himself constantly tested. But giving up was never an option. By his junior year, he was a full-time starter. By his senior year, he was the heart of the team, averaging 15.7 points per game. More importantly, he developed a reputation for being one of the toughest, most hard-working players in the NCAA. Despite the odds, he had transformed himself from an unknown high school player to an NBA prospect. But the journey wasn't over yet. Draft night was coming, and no one knew what would happen next. It was June 23, 2011, NBA draft night. Jimmy Butler sat nervously, waiting for his name to be called. For years, he had fought against the odds, proving himself at every level. But now his fate was in the hands of NBA executives. He wasn't a top prospect. He wasn't projected to go in the lottery. In fact, many analysts doubted if he would even get drafted at all. Pick after pick went by, and Jimmy's name remained uncalled. As the first round neared its end, doubt crept in. What if all the hard work wasn't enough? What if his NBA dream ended before it even began? Then, with the 30th pick in the first round, the Chicago Bulls made their selection, Jimmy Butler. His dream had come true. But getting drafted was only the beginning. For many first-round picks, the transition to the NBA comes with immediate playing time and big contracts. Not for Jimmy. As a late first-rounder, he had to earn every minute on the floor. The Bulls already had established stars like Derrick Rose, Luol Deng, and Joakim Noah. There was no guaranteed spot for Jimmy. His rookie season was brutal. Limited minutes, few opportunities, endless hours in practice with no guarantees. Some players might have given up. But Jimmy had been through worse. He knew what it was like to be overlooked, and he knew how to fight back. Every practice became a test. Every minute on the court, no matter how short, was a chance to prove himself. And slowly, the Bulls started to notice. By his second season, his defensive tenacity and work ethic earned him more playing time. By his third season, he was a full-time starter, and by his fourth season, he was no longer just a role player. He was a rising star. Jimmy's breakout moment came in the 2014-15 season. He won the NBA's Most Improved Player award, averaging 20 points per game and establishing himself as one of the best two-way players in the league. His defense was elite. His offense had improved drastically, and most importantly, his mentality never changed. He still played with the same hunger and determination as the homeless kid who had nothing. Then came the defining moment of his career, leading a team of his own. When Derrick Rose's injuries slowed the Bulls down, Jimmy became the face of the franchise. He embraced the challenge, leading Chicago with his relentless attitude and fearless play. But as he rose, so did tensions. Not everyone liked the way Jimmy pushed his teammates. His intensity, his demand for greatness, it wasn't for everyone. Eventually, the Bulls traded him to the Minnesota Timberwolves in 2017. Some saw it as a demotion. Jimmy saw it as another test. In Minnesota, Jimmy led the young Timberwolves to their first playoff appearance in 14 years. But tensions arose again. His work ethic clashed with players who didn't share the same hunger. In one legendary practice, he dominated the team's starters using only bench players, then stormed out, sending a clear message: if you don't want it as bad as me, I don't want to play with you. The drama led to another trade, this time to the Philadelphia 76ers. But even there, things didn't quite fit. Jimmy was still searching for a team that matched his mindset, a team that needed a leader like him. Then, in 2019, he found his home, the Miami Heat. Miami was different. The Heat's culture was built on toughness, discipline, and hard work, values Jimmy lived by his entire life. In his first season, he led an underdog Miami team to the 2020 NBA Finals. Though they lost to LeBron James and the Lakers, Jimmy had officially cemented himself as a superstar. He didn't just compete, he carried the Heat on his back, delivering one of the greatest finals performances ever, scoring 40 points in a triple-double to force a Game 6. He wasn't just an NBA player anymore, he was one of the league's best. Since then, he has led Miami to multiple deep playoff runs, proving time and time again that he is one of the toughest competitors in basketball history. From a homeless kid with no future to one of the greatest NBA players of his generation, Jimmy Butler's story is one of resilience, hard work, and an unbreakable will. He didn't come from privilege. He wasn't handed anything. He built his success from the ground up, one battle at a time. And even now, after years in the NBA, his hunger hasn't faded. Because for Jimmy Butler, the fight never stops. This is the story of Jimmy Butler, the homeless boy who defied the odds to become an NBA legend. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. What part of Jimmy Butler's journey inspires you the most? Let us know. And remember, no matter where you come from, your future is in your hands. Keep grinding, keep believing, and never stop chasing your dreams. Until next time, stay motivated, stay hungry, and keep pushing forward.